Happy Monday, everyone. Here we are with, I'm Greg Dixon. I'm here with Betty Withrow, and we're talking to Margo Arrowsmith, and who has a program called Your Perfect Retirement Living. She has a couple of special offers for you, but today we're going to talk about why it's really important. I think you have an example of why this is very
Uh,
important to do
I
this.
have so many examples, Greg. As you know anyway, I've been a therapist working with individuals and families for 40 plus years. So I've encountered a lot of situations. The last 5 years, my clientele has been mostly, not entirely, but mostly older people, many of whom are retired. And initially, I went into homes. So I've been into the residential centers. I've been into people's houses. I've been into 55 plus. So I got a taste of a lot of what's going on in these places. Some of which is great. Some of which is not so great. Um, and now I see a lot of people, of course, in my office because I'm only in the office now. Well, when I was going into homes, I found a lot of people who were in places that either they thought they'd be very happy, or their family thought they would be very happy, or someone thought they would be very happy, and in fact, they were quite miserable. Fortunately, now the people who are coming into my office, some of them are living in residential centers and not happy about it for various reasons. Some are okay with where they're living, but a lot of people are still here because even at 70 and 80, people are still thinking about what they want to do with their lives when they grow up. And that actually thrills me to know that there are people who are still, they haven't given up. They're not saying life is over, I'm going to stay where I am. However, what has really come to mind for me and what I'm really seeing is that uh, when it comes to deciding what you want, people are at a loss. They really don't even know where to start. So a lot of the time they will say, well, this is what I always thought I wanted. I mean, I'm remembering what I thought I wanted when I was 30, and it bears no resemblance to what I know I want today. Um, so they'll go with that. It's kind of the default, to use a technological term. Uh, or they don't know what they want. So they have family members who come in and say, well, this is what you want. This is what you should do. Well meaning family members, mostly. And sometimes they'll have doctors who say, well, this is what you want, or a lawyer who says, this is what you want. So they go along with it. And again, as I've said, my experience over the last 5 years is that while sometimes that works out, a lot of the times it doesn't. Um, and tragically, not only is the person unhappy, have they wasted a lot of money and a lot of time for a lot of grief, but it also tends to come between families. Um, Salespeople have been led to believe, and in most cases, what my belief or my experience tells me that it's true, is that it's a lot easier to sell children on where their parents should be than it is to sell the actual person on where they should be. So they market the children, and they terrify the children. If you don't put your family member here, all of these terrible things will happen. I mean, I got that with when my dad was living with me. Horrible things are going to happen if you don't bring him here or bring him there. And I knew that that wasn't true, but I had to fight a lot. Anyway, so that's one of the reasons I've developed this program, is to help the people that can still be helped. And I'm going to give you a few examples, one of which, and I've talked about this one before, but I cannot tell this story enough. Uh, I got a call from a woman whose mother was in a very nice, it was kind of a hybrid between independent living and assisted living. It had probably 100 apartments in it, maybe more. Beautiful though. And she was one of the first people there. So she got her choice of the best apartment. She had a balcony overlooking she had a very nice view from the balcony, and it was lovely. It really was quite lovely. This particular place had fancy dining, they like to call it, cloth tablecloths and cloth napkins, and it was quite lovely. Problem was, is that every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, took 2.5 hours, lots of reasons for that. I'm not going to go into those. But a lot of the people, some of the people actually like that because they had nothing better to do with their time. But my client did not like that. So in fact, she refused to go to meals because she didn't want to waste 2.5 hours a day, or no, 7.5 hours a day. So she got a lot of complaints, and they would call the daughter up and say, your mother's not coming to meals. And of course, the daughter thought that once she got her mother in this nice place, the problems would be over, but they were complaining because, well, your mother's not coming to meals and we require that. Okay. So she called me up, the daughter called me up and said, dad died. I sold mom's house because she couldn't take care of it. I put her in this lovely place, and it's lovely. It's lovely, but she's depressed. That's what I was told. So, okay. So you got to go see her and help her with this depression. So I went over. First time I went over was about 3-4 times. Nice lady. However, she wasn't depressed. And I'm going to close your ears if you don't like this language, but she was pissed off, quite frankly. And the person she was pissed off at was her daughter, who had put her here without really understanding what her mother needed. Now, I understand in this particular case, she was a woman in her early 80s. She couldn't mow the lawn. She probably couldn't keep her house up to cleaning standards. We know she could cook because she cooked all her meals because she refused to go to the dining room. So she could do that. But instead of thinking, well, we'll hire a lawn service and we'll get a cleaning service to come in once a month or once a week or whatever, the thought was, well, there's this beautiful place for her to go. Let's sell the house and go. Now, what wasn't considered was not just the attachment that my client had to her house, but that she had lived in that neighborhood for 50 years. And that most of her neighbors had lived there for 30, 40, 50 years. They were a close-knit group. And what they had done was taken her out of this close-knit group, which was much more important than anything else. And the daughter's like, but there's all these people there. She'll make new friends. Well, she wasn't interested in making new friends. And certainly, in part, she wasn't interested in making new friends because she was mad at her daughter. But also, these weren't the kind of people she would have made friends with anywhere else. Why would she make friends with them there? So we met about 3-4 times. She still had neighbors coming to visit her where she was, but it wasn't the same. So we met 3-4 times, and finally she's like, well, this is nice and all, but So I stopped going. Twice more, the daughter called me up. You got to go back. She's still depressed. But you know what? Her house was already sold. Even if we could meet and say, well, she really doesn't want to be here, the house was gone. Her place in that neighborhood was gone. If she had taken that course that I have, and I think Greg has now, has a great idea where you can actually take the Your Perfect Day part of my course separately. So even if you don't go ahead and take the rest of it, you can do that, and you can really get a better idea about yourself. And if your children say, well, you should do this, you can say, no. I really put a lot of thought into this. This isn't just a whim that I want to stay home. This isn't a fantasy that I want to stay home. I put a lot of thought into it. So children, if you want to help me figure out how to do it. How can I hire a lawn service? How can I hire a cleaning service? Or neither? I mean, because maybe some people are perfectly fine there. You find that out when you take the, thank you, Greg, he put that up there. When you take the Perfect Day exercise part of my overall course, okay? But I've come across, because I'm on LinkedIn, as many of you are seeing me on LinkedIn, so you know that. But I'm on LinkedIn, and every once in a while, I'll get a video like you're getting my video today. And I got this one. It was 2 young women, very nice, well-meaning young women. One was a marketer for senior housing, and the other was a marketer to market to people who are marketers for senior housing to tell them how to do it better. That a little convoluted, but that's what her job was. And they were talking about tips about how to market your place. And one of them said, well, one of the things you want to do is to have them not bring anyone with them. You don't want them to bring like a sister, because what if the sister asks questions that your prospective resident might not have asked? And then you just have to deal with more questions. You don't want them asking questions. I was horrified. I wish I could say I was surprised. I wasn't surprised, but I was horrified. Excuse me, I forgot to turn this thing off. I also, where my practice where I work, I want to add this one. This is interesting. We got a new marketer for my practice, and we're an outpatient practice, so very different. But she had been a marketer for a residence, and they were told, because it's very controversial about what you should call these places, and I have been called down for using the term facility. So I've been trying to be more sensitive about not saying facility. But what she said was, when you're selling a prospective resident, is you call your place a community. And then when you're referring to other places they may have visited, you call them facilities. So they have all these techniques, again, which is fine. That's what salespeople do. That moves our economy. Fine. However, do you really want that to be the basis of where you're going to live for the rest of your life, perhaps? And that's why I made the course. And I'm wondering if Greg had everybody else on because you two have some things to say.
Yeah, no, I think the all those issues, like the issue like with the mother and her daughter, all of that could have been avoided if they had gone through your perfect day exercise, so that the two of them knew what she wanted, so though that doesn't always help, because sometimes the children make decisions because it's convenient for them, not for
This
the
particular woman found out it wasn't as convenient for her as was promised, because again, when mom wouldn't go to the dining room, they were getting a lot of calls. But I'm sorry, Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's really important. And then the rest of it is, as you were saying, like once you get into a situation like that, it's hard to get yourself out. Like you said, the house was sold already. They were probably maybe even locked into a contract where she was at, and could be expensive and trouble to change. So better to, and that's the whole magic of your program, is knowledge is power. So the more you know about what the options are and the choices are, and as you say, you need to do your own homework and just not listen to what the salesperson says, because that may not be the whole story when they're talking about it. And Betty, do you want to add something here?
Go ahead, Betty.
Yeah, I think the perfect day exercise is wonderful because it does give you a chance to get insight into what really moves you, and in the case of the woman that you talked about, it was her friends. She didn't care even where she was living as much as she cared about being with people that she knew and loved and had interacted with for all those years. And so she lost the mainstay of her life, the thing that was keeping her going. And then she became somebody who was a difficult person in a facility. Mm-hmm. That's a complete loss of identity for her. Again, like Greg said, if she and her daughter had gone through the exercise together, they would have gotten some clarity and some communication. Even if there was disagreement, at least everybody would have known what was going on.
And even with the disagreement, because further down if you take the whole course, and again, just do the first part, that's fine. But if you take the whole course, we talk about, for instance, for someone like her who wants to stay at home, and her daughter was worried about it. I can understand that. Mom was going to be living alone. She was older. I get that. However, we then talk about, whatever choice you make, what is it that's going to enable you to do that? So if staying at home is it, first thing you do is you call somebody in to come in and, I guess, older adult proof your house. They look for places where you might fall. They look for, they put in grab bars where they're needed. They put in a walk-in shower so nobody's stepping up over a bathtub. And that sounds like it might be expensive, but compared to, $5,000 to $10,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment, it's very inexpensive in the long run. And then of course then we talk about, well, how can it get cleaned? If you're not able to clean the house, how can it get cleaned? Well, you hire somebody, and how to do that, and how to get somebody to do the other work that you're not able to do. Part of the Your Perfect Day exercise is we help you discover, maybe you're thinking you have to leave your house because, well, you like to plant flowers, but you hate the rest of it. Well, we talk about, well, there's ways to do that. You don't have to give up the flowers because you don't like mowing the lawn. And that's a very small example of all the reasons why it's so important to know where your heart really is. The division between your heart and your mind, I mean, it's there, I guess. And I guess some people, I mean, I guess we can think of people we've dated who we shouldn't have dated because our hearts overrode our minds. But for the most part, we can get our hearts and our minds to work together. We really can. And that's one of the things that the Perfect Day exercise does for people. It teaches you first go with your heart, and then we teach you how to have your mind get what your heart wants in the safest, least expensive, and easiest way possible. I think that really is what we're doing here, is finding out what your heart wants and then helping your mind help your heart to get what your heart wants.
No, that's perfect. And the other thing is, if I understand what you're saying correctly, is start where you're at. So with the mother there, she missed her community. So moving her out of the community was a problem. And you're also saying that maybe that's not even the best choice for her to, there are all sorts of things. If she's starting to have health issues, like for example, I think you mentioned she couldn't cut her lawn anymore, so you can hire somebody to cut the lawn. Yeah. She could still cook. She loved cooking, so she can cook in the kitchen. And then maybe she didn't want it cleaned, so you can always bring somebody in to clean.
Exactly. I mean, it's ideal.
And if you start having some health issues where you need somebody to come in and do a few things for you, personally, then that's possible too. And that can be way less expensive than going into a facility.
Well, and the continuous care residential communities not only charge $5,000 to $10,000 a month, you have to put several $100,000 down. Just give it to them when you enter. So a whole lot of money. But I want to get back to what you said, Greg, about looking at where you are. One of the mistakes that gets made is that children who have parents who live far away, and I know that can be upsetting. And I was lucky. I mean, I had my parents living in my backyard, literally. I had a little cottage in my backyard, and it was ideal. However, but I do understand. They had lived 3,000 miles away from me when my dad had cancer. So I know how hard that is. I know what it's like. However, they think, well, we'll bring my parents down to where I live. Whether it's in an apartment by themselves or whether it's in my own house. I've seen people make mistakes with that. I've seen it work out beautifully. I've seen people make mistakes. Or whether it's going to be in an independent living or assisted living. And I've seen that work out. I've seen it be terrible. But here's the deal. If you really want to have your parents live near you, ask yourself the question. This is not in the course. We give a lot of extra advice, in these videos and in the course. This is not part of the course, but it's an extra bonus. If you want your parents to live near you, ask yourself, well, how much time am I willing to give them? And I will say this: I have worked with people whose children have said, "You got to come." And I'll give you this one example. They had the parents living in the house, and it was a lovely setup. Mother was in her 80s, so was dad, but they had been a military family. So mom had been used to moving around and making new friends, but she had been in her 80s. They'd been where they were. They had a lovely home for 25 years after his retirement. She was perfectly happy, but daughter says, no, you have to come live with us. Okay, fine. But then she got to resent how much time she had to spend with her daughter. So you got to think about these things ahead of time. Or a case will be, I had another client who, she lived here in Raleigh. Her son and daughter-in-law and 2 granddaughters who she adored lived in Brooklyn, New York, part of New York City, for those of you who don't know. And they wanted her to come up and get an apartment. Now, besides the fact that it was going to cost her more, probably 3 times as much for a place 1/3 the size, she was willing to do that. But I said to her, well, how often are you going to be visiting them? You should ask that before you leave your friends, go to a much more expensive, much smaller place. How much time are you going to be visiting them? So she asked, and her daughter-in-law is like, well, we thought what would be great is for you to come over for dinner once a month. Woo! Wait a minute. If you're going to give up that much, if you want your parents to give up that much, I think once a week is a minimum. But again, your parents, if you say that to them clearly, I think we can come and be with you, spend a whole day with you once a month. If your parents are okay with that, fine, but make sure that you and your parents, or you and your children, have discussed that before anybody makes any big move. There's so many things, and this again, part of the Your Perfect Day exercise covers that. It gets people in that mode of really thinking things through before they do it. Yeah. But don't make any kind of move until you've really thought about it. Do not ask your parents to make a big move until you really think. And that doesn't mean, I'm not trying to guilt trip anybody. If you only want to see your parents 1 day a month, hey, that's not a problem. That's fine. Just don't ask them to leave all their friends and their house and everything for that to happen. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with them. Talk about everything before you move. That goes for whether you're moving near your kids or not. Think about it all before you move. That's what my course is about.
Yeah, it's all about clarity, as Betty said, clarity in what you want, and it's also a family thing, because if it's involved, it's for the people who are looking for a new place to live, or to stay in their own home, and also how to work out with the family. And so we're going through that right now with Bonnie's father and his situation. But yeah, some of those things really need a full discussion before you make any decisions that you may not be able to go back on. So,
yeah.
Betty?
Did you have something to say, Betty?
No, I'm just agreeing with Greg. Talk about it and be clear about what everybody really have to for instance, for the parent, how much time do your children have to spend with you? They may have a lot of obligations, a lot of stress. You never know. And for the children, how much time is it realistic for you to spend with your parents when your life is happening as well? And where's the sweet spot where it's quality time and it's not like, oh man, now I have to go visit mom and dad. That's the last thing you want to be thinking about.
Exactly. I will confess something to you. I wrote a book, You Can Keep Your Parents Home, and it's about me keeping my parents at my house. And after mom died and I had dad, and everybody was wanting me to put him in a assisted living so he'd be around other people, which he would have hated, by the way. But one of my guilty secrets that I said was, one of the reasons that I wanted to do it was because, when I came home at night, I could say, hi, Dad, and then I could go off and do my thing, or I could say, hi, Dad, and we could spend the evening watching television together. But I know what I would have hated was to have to say, after a long day of work, to have to go to an assisted living and sit in some room with him where we had to be quiet and couldn't jump up and down and yell at football games. So to me, when people would say, "Oh, you're a saint," and I'm like, "No, this is definitely better. This I enjoy, because now I can enjoy being with my dad. It's not a chore to have to go visit." Now there are people who are okay with that, but I knew myself and I knew my dad.
Yep. I'm going to stop the camera and mute because I have to sneeze again.
Oh.
Well, maybe it's a good time for us to.
I think we're about done anyway.
Anyway, so the thing is go visit yourperfectretirementliving.com. There's a lot of information about the course, and there's a special offer there for your perfect day exercise. Where is that here? And really, that's no matter what, that's the place to start. So you need to
Yeah.
design and envision what your life moving forward looks like, and what the life of your loved one looks like. So you get there and get the clarity, and then from then on, the greater course has a bunch of insights into, how to look at the different. You describe all of the different kinds of options, many of the options, and we'll probably add some more over time, and including one is living on a cruise ship. So and
Greg, I just had a thought, by the way, because we're talking about people thinking about retirement, taking this Your Perfect Day exercise. I think it would be good for the kids to take too, because once they've done it honestly, well, how much time, that would be a way for them to know, honestly, how much time is there for your parents if you're thinking about having your parents
well, yeah. So
Right.
actually, that's a really good suggestion. Like everybody involved, like all of the stakeholders, right? That
Yes.
that they take it, says, well, what would be the perfect scenario for me, in each one, and then you can sit down and trade notes, right? And then it'll become like that. That thing is says, I want to spend time with my family, and then the family says, well, we want to see you once a month. So
Yeah.
at least it's clear that you're not quite on the same page. So that's a really good suggestion, Margo. So
Yeah. Well, you gave it to you gave me the idea, Greg. That's what's so great about having a
So
team.
go to yourperfectretirementliving.com and just sign up and try it. You can have fun with it, for one. It'll be a fun thing to do, and it can really help inform your future decisions to make really good decisions for you and your loved ones.
Exactly.
So with that, I guess happy Monday, everybody.
And happy July 4th for the
Happy
Americans
July
out
4th.
there.
Yeah, it was Canada Day weekend.
Right.
So they had celebrations here on July 1st, Saturday, but there's some things going on. And then July 4th, you've got July 4th, Independence Day going on in the US. And
You could be in Vancouver on Saturday for the fireworks and then drive down to Seattle on Tuesday
yeah,
for the
yeah.
fireworks.
Well, or just watch them on television wherever I am.
That's probably what I would do, but yeah.
Yeah.
People who are real firework freaks, they could do both. So.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Anyway, so
Bye-bye, people.
bye-bye.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.